welcome back for episode number 130 of the weekly playback. If I have any new subscribers, thanks to my top 10 list, then welcome. I hope you'll stick around. And yes, I did get a haircut and it might be a little bit too short, but it'll grow out. I just needed to get my money's worth when I go get a haircut. So let's just get into the games that I've played in the last couple of weeks. Let's talk about Oranges and Lemons. This is a 2024 game for 2 to 5 players designed by Richard Denning, and the art is done by Andre Schneider, and it's published by Medusa Games. Now, this is a game which I purchased at Spiel Essen. However, I did receive a very slight discount on it, but I don't consider it a preview copy, or a review copy rather, because I did pay for it, and the discount was very, very slight, which I remember thinking at the time when I got the game. But I do need to mention that I got a tiny discount on it. So anyway, this is a worker placement game which is based on a nursery rhyme. I've never read the nursery rhyme, but I'm just going to read you the description because it kind of gives you an idea of what you're going to be doing in this game. So it says, starting with just 2 workers, limited storage capacity, and only able to transport what 1 person can carry, the players must make the best they can of early 18th century London, expanding their transport by acquiring first a hand cart, then a horse and a cart, and ultimately a ship, and by visiting locations mentioned in and activities inspired by the Oranges and Lemons nursery rhyme. Here they can buy and sell goods such as lemons, pancakes, bricks, and pans, get involved in the gold lending business, fulfill export contracts at the docks, try their hands at politics, invest in the early stock market, or back risky but possibly lucrative expeditions to the East Indies. There are multiple routes to obtaining wealth and prestige. The winner will be the player who can best combine the available strategies to emerge as master of commerce with the city at their feet. So this board is quite huge, so I'm not going to show you the whole board, but it has 16 different worker placement locations on this board, and everyone will have this really handy dandy player aid which will show you all of the locations with their location number and what happens at each location and the bell bonus you can have at each location, and I'll talk about what a bell bonus is when we get there. So let me just show you an example of a player board. So this is an example of a player board, and you're going to have certain transports covered up and storage covered up, and you won't get those until you upgrade your storage or your transport. So you start with 1 cube spot available to store a certain type of good, and you need to uncover your other transports or your storage in order to be able to store more and more goods. What else? So you have these bells, which you're going to have covered up with 3 small bells, a medium, and a large. And once you uncover those, you'll be placing those onto the board if you took that worker spot location. Here, if you sell any loans, you will have the loans over here, which you'll be collecting interest for. If you purchase any votes, you'll have your votes over here, and so on. So this is an interesting worker placement game in which there's a turn order track in the center of the board. And your turn order is determined by the locations on the board where you actually placed your workers in a certain round. So to start the game with, the first player will be the first one in the turn order track, then the second player, then the third player, then the third player again, then the second player, then the first player. And of course, you have your starting resources depending on where you are in the turn order track and so on. So you're going to go based on the turn order track, taking turns placing your worker, whoever is the next active player in the turn order track, in a location on the main board. And the main board has 16 different locations, and some worker areas might have more spots for workers than others, and so on. And of course, that also depends on player count. So throughout the game, you're going to be trying to collect a variety of different resources, such as lemons and pancakes and bricks and so on. You'll be trying to turn in those resources in order to collect some ships like exports, fulfill some contracts, and I'll show you an example of those right now. So for example, here is a level 2 contract that you might be able to fulfill during the game. If you go to a certain worker location, you can turn in 2 pans and immediately gain 13 money. And the ships you have will be worth points at the end of the game as well, if you have the most of them, and so on. So you'll be doing that. You can invest in the stock market if you want to. The stock market value is impacted at the end of each round. Well, not necessarily at the end of each round, during this one worker location by the East Indies Company. So the stock market value is impacted by the East Indies Company and which tiles come out on that part of the board. You can sell things, you can trade things, and so on. So you're just basically going to be doing a lot of different things in order to obviously gain the most points that you can in order to win this game. Sorry, there's fur flying around. So as I mentioned, that each player has a player aid, which will show you all of the different location worker spots. And you're going to be referring to this quite a bit because you might need to revise your strategy as the game is progressing. And this is going to happen quite a bit where someone might take a worker spot that you want, or, you know, there might not be a worker spot location left anymore, or you might see, oh, someone has gone to the docks and they're planning on fulfilling a contract. Then you might take a peek at their board and take a look at what goods they have available and what contract you think that they might be trying to fulfill, because then you realize that you might be screwed out of fulfilling the contract that you want to fulfill. So this is one of those games where you're going to be revising your strategy over and over as the game is progressing, even as you're in a certain round about to put down a worker. So everyone is going to place all of their workers first, and then you will resolve them. So you're going to be resolving your, revising your strategy even as you're placing workers during the worker placement phase. Then you're going to have the action phase where you resolve all the locations in order. So you're going to start with location 1 and resolve that, then move on to location 2. And you're going to do this for all 16 locations. Some locations you can just skip over if there are no workers there. However, there is one location where even if there are no workers, you're still going to resolve it, because that is the location which will impact the stock market when new ships in the East Indies Company come out, and that will impact whether the stock market goes up or down, the value of the stocks. So when you look at a certain location, for example, location number 1, the first worker who went there will be the one who gets to resolve their action first. And then they'll take that worker and place it into the first location on the turn order track. Then the second person at location 1 would place their worker behind them. So you're going to resolve by worker placement order in each location in order number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and going on all the way to 16. So like I said, that's when you're going to really, during the placement phase, worker placement phase, be revising your strategy, because you'll get to see who's already placed a worker at a certain location, and you realize that they might get the more lucrative spot. They might be able to buy more lemons than you. And if you need a certain number of lemons, you might decide to revise your strategy, because now you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to get to buy 3 lemons because that person's obviously going to get 3 lemons before me. So maybe I should go over here. Maybe I should go to like, Shoreditch and do something else instead, you know. So you're going to be going to different locations and just revising your strategy throughout the game, which is a lot of fun. I think I like games where you're, you know, having to consistently revise your strategy and think about what you want to do, and you'll almost always be able to come up with something else. One of the location spots allows you to place out a bell if you pay for a bell. So you have to place out one of your small bells before you can eventually place out your medium one, and you have to place out your medium one before you can eventually place out your largest bell. And of course, any uncovered bell spots are worth points at the end of the game. Placing a bell at a certain location will give you a bell bonus, which you can either take when you activate that location or at the end of the round, depending on the location that it is. If you've placed a small bell and someone comes in and they want to place a medium-sized bell, they can knock out your smaller-sized bell, and then you can immediately replace that, put that down somewhere else where there's an available bell spot. So that happened to me twice. Like, I did not even get to use the bell bonuses. Like, I would place down my bell, and then in the same round, someone would come and knock out my smaller bell with their bigger bell. So I didn't even get to do the things that I wanted to do, which really sucked. So then I ended up placing my bell somewhere else, which actually in one case benefited me, because the one bell spot I wanted to go to would have allowed me to take a peek at some votes and choose which vote tile I want. Those are tiles which are worth points at the end of the game. So rather than just picking up one blindly, I would have been able to look at both of them and then decide 2 of them and then decide which one I want to keep. However, someone kicked me out of that spot. So then I went to another location, which essentially allowed me to move a worker of mine from, you know, somewhere towards the end in the turn order track to one of the first spots in the turn order track, which ended up being very beneficial for me in the very last round. So in the end, it worked out okay, I guess. So yeah, so that is the thing. So even as I mentioned, so as you're resolving locations, that's when your workers then go to the turn order track. So where you are placing in a current round is also determining where you're going to be in the next round. And as I mentioned earlier, you do have an opportunity to buy more workers. So you can purchase more workers and recruit more workers and have more turns in a certain round throughout the game if you want to do that. So everyone has the ability to have up to 3 more workers. You start the game with 2, but you can recruit 3 more throughout the game by spending money and so on. So it's a really interesting game. And that, you know, you're just having to revise your strategy and being mindful of the different kinds of things that are happening. So end of round, the player aid also shows you what happens at the end of each round. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if there were any cubes on the board, like the different kinds of goods that you can collect, all of those get refilled, except for at one location where they don't get refilled. If you gave out any loans, you get to collect interest on your loans. Certain locations have bell bonuses, which activate at the end of a round, which you'll do then, and so on. And then at the end of the game, you'll see end game scoring, which is over here, and it's very handy, this thing, and you'll do your individual scoring, and then you'll have end game bonuses. So every person has individual scoring, and then at the end of the game, you're also going to compare things with other players and maybe get bonuses as a result of that as well. And then of course, whoever has the most victory points will win. So I know we did not go over all the locations because there are just way too many locations to go over, but just to kind of give you an idea, there's locations where you can just get goods, there's locations where you can trade goods, there's locations where you can fulfill contracts, there's locations where you can get a vote tile, there's locations where you can upgrade your storage, as we talked about, in order to increase your capacity. There's locations where you can invest in the stock market, you can buy and sell shares. Like, there's just a whole variety of locations. If you just straight up need money, there's locations where you can just straight up collect money as well, which can be very useful. So yeah, just a lot of different location spots for you to choose from, and just a lot of variety. And I just really enjoyed my play of this game, and I really hope to play it again. So yeah, so if you enjoy worker placement games, I think that this is one you'll probably want to add to your collection. It's not doing anything super innovative. It's not like, you know, I think that there's a lot of pressure on designers to come out with games that have something really innovative in them. And, you know, I've seen some of the comments on BGG talking about how this game doesn't really have anything innovative in it. I don't think games always need to have something really innovative in them in order to be really enjoyable and just good games. And I think that this is a good, enjoyable game. And if you enjoy a really good worker placement game, then I would recommend checking this one out. So that was Oranges and Lemons. So let's move on. Let's talk about Awkward Guess 2, the Berwick Cases. Now, this is a deduction game for 2 players only. This is a 2023 game designed by Ron Gonzalo Garcia and Paz Navarro Moreno, and the art is done by Samuel Gonzalo Garcia and Laura Medina Solera, and it's published by Megacorpin Games. And this is a game which I backed on Kickstarter myself, and I backed like the deluxe edition. So it comes with like the dry erase boards and everything. So this is a 2-player like whodunit kind of game. So in this game, you're both going to be devising a mystery for your opponent to solve, and you're also going to be trying to solve the mystery which your opponent devised for you during the game. However, it's done in a very fair way so that one person does not have an advantage over the other. So the setup is quite a bit, you know, the setup will take you a bit of time as you go through the instructions and figure out, you know, how you're going to actually devise this murder. So the setup will tell you what things you need to, you know, check off on your sheet. So everyone's sheet will have 2 sides. So you'll have one dark side and one light side. So you are going to be devising a murder for your opponent on one side and solving the murder on the other, and they're going to be devising the murder on one side and solving the murder on the opposite side. So each person will have one side which they're responsible for devising the murder, and one side for which they're responsible for solving the murder. And likewise, the main board has 2 sides as well, which is going to get flipped over during each round so that each person has an opportunity to ask questions. So my copy of the game did come with these standees, which are not necessary, but they're just a fun little thing to have in case you ever want to put a certain character in a room and ask about something in that room. You can do that, but it's really not necessary. Each person will have dice, which will allow you to or dictate which actions you can take. However, you can always sacrifice 1 dice in order to change the face of another die. So these dice have the different kinds of actions that you will be able to take on them. So whatever you roll is the action that you can take, though you will have the opportunity to re-roll once a certain number of dice, and if you still don't like your rolls, you can sacrifice one die to change the face of another die. So your player screen, which hides your player board, will have like a player aid with all of the different actions shown on them, though I wish it did have some words because it's not super clear sometimes still what you can do, even based with the player aid. So we kept on referring to the rule book when we played. Yeah, and each person is going to have cards, which will you know, you'll be drawing during the game, and it'll tell you which information you can cross off on your sheet. So each person will have their own deck based on which color, which sister they're playing as, and so on. So basically, it's a process of elimination. So this game is a deduction game in which you're basically trying to eliminate what the false leads are. You're trying to eliminate where the murder did not occur, which weapons were not used, and so on. And when you feel like you finally have enough information to try to guess who the murderer was, in which room it happened, what the weapon was, and what the motive was, then at the end of each round, after each player has had their opportunity to gather their information for the murder that they're trying to solve, each person is going to then secretly decide which card they want to reveal at the end of the round. The card will show you that you show each player whether you want to continue getting clues or whether you want to attempt to solve. So you're going to reveal this card at the same time at the end of each round. So that's why it's still fair, and no one person has an advantage over the other person in this game. If you both decide to solve the murder at the same time, then the rule book does have a rule for tiebreakers, and I think it's like something about who had like used fewer like clues or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the tiebreaker is, but there is a tiebreaker. So yeah, so it's just a deduction game for two players in which you are devising a murder and solving a murder at the same time. So it's nice. I enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I wish, you know, I like the fact that this box is small, much smaller than the actual Awkward game, Awkward guest box, which you can play solo. You cannot play this solo for obvious reasons because, you know, there's no way for someone, maybe if they came up with an app or something, you could do a solo then, but that might be too much for them to do. So if I ever want to play Awkward Guest solo, I need to play with the regular one, I can't play solo with this one. But I really like the color scheme of this one. I think it's really pretty. And yeah, and I ended up getting this like little book, which is absolutely not necessary, but it just kind of gives you the inspiration for the different characters that they have. So like, for example, here's one character who was inspired by Stanley from The Office. And then there's another character who was inspired by Phyllis from The Office. And then as someone who just loves art, I just love like the different drawings and stuff in this book. So it's just a nice little book to have, but totally not necessary. Like there's nothing in this that you actually need in order to play the game. So yeah, so I ended up getting that as well. So yeah, so that was Awkward Guess 2. So if you enjoy deduction games and you actually have a partner who enjoys deduction games as well, and you want a small little deduction game that the two of you can play together and devise mysteries for each other, and maybe you can even tell stories about the murder as you're playing, like you could make it more fun, I guess, then you might want to check this game out. So yeah, so that was Awkward Guess 2. So let's move on. Another game I played recently is Bebop. So this is a 2024 game for 2 to 4 players, designed by Robert Hovakimian, and the art is done by Webers and Santiago, and it's published by Bitewing Games. And this is a copy which I backed on Kickstarter myself, so it is not a review copy. Now this is very much an abstract strategy game. So I know it has kind of a theme of like jazz musicians and all of that, but it is very abstract. Like you really, when you're playing it, you don't really, the theme doesn't come through so much. Like you might see it in the artwork and the dice and so on, but you're not really getting the feel of being fans of jazz music and so on. So not very intuitive. You're just going to have to learn the rules and then know how to play. Like the theme is not going to help you at all, in my opinion. So my copy, since I backed the deluxe version, and I don't know if all copies come with multiple boards, but it comes with 2 boards and each board has 2 sides. So I don't remember which color we played with. I think it was the green one, but I honestly cannot remember now. But I think we played with this board when we played. But like I said, each one has 2 different sides, but I think that this is the one we played with. So in a 3-player game, which is what I played, you don't use this section of the board. So I'm just going to show you a couple of things. Like here, you'll have a tracker, which will determine the value of like the keys, the winds, and the drums, and I'll explain what that means. You have a point tracker around the board, and then here you're going to have a pool of dice for you to choose from after you place some dice onto the board. So basically, each player is going to have a bunch of these like little, let me see, hexagon shaped things. And you're going to have some which are just regular. So I think you have 11 which are just plain and don't have any special ability. And then you have 5 special ones which will give you a special ability of some kind if you place it. And then of course there are a bunch of dice in this game of different colors, and they have different instrument symbols on them. So there's also red colored dice, which I did not happen to pull any out of, but yeah, so yeah, and they have the different instruments on them. So the keys, the drums, and the horns. And then there are these tokens which will be placed onto the board with the different instrument symbols on them. So just to show you a couple of examples. So these are going to be placed somewhat randomly on the board. And I say somewhat because you can't have duplicates on a certain stage. So you're going to be placing them onto what are called stages. So for example, this is a stage, this is a stage. And then you're going to see spaces around the stage where there's like regular spaces where you will place one of your regular discs, or you will have a special one where you can place a special one, and so on. So the stars you'll only be allowed to place the disc that has a star on it, so the special star disc. So each player will have one of those. So there's going to be a lot of empty spaces once the game is over, because there's quite a few spaces on this board that have stars on them, but each player only has one disc that has a star on it that they can place out onto a starred location. So basically, on your turn, you're either going to place down one of your discs or place down a die. So you're going to do one or the other. But if you have 3 empty discs, then for your next turn, you must place a die, because you can never have 4 empty discs in total at any point during the game. And if you were to do some kind of a special action that would result in you having 4 empty discs, then you would not be able to do that special action, because you can never have 4 empty discs. So basically, oh, there's player aid. Actually, I'll refer to the player aid. So yeah, so on your turn, you're either going to claim a seat, which is to place one of your seat tiles. Okay, that's what it's called, not a disc. A seat tile onto the board. You can re-roll 1 die optional. Oh, well, I think we completely forgot about that rule. At least no one in my group did it when we played. Crap, that would have been very beneficial. Okay, definitely need to replay this game because I don't think anyone re-rolled a die. I mean, Bruce, if you're watching this, correct me if I'm wrong. Did anyone re-roll a die when they claimed a seat? Because I do not remember doing that, and that could have really helped me out because I performed very, very badly in this game. Okay, so that's one action. You can claim a seat, which is where you place out one of your tiles and re-roll 1 die optionally. Okay, and then it says right here, you may only have 3 open seats at a time. So that's one action you can do on your turn, or you can book a seat, which is when you place a die. So, and then you score the symbol in the family. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So a family is a group of dice, and you ignore the tiles that are surrounding that stage. So if you placed down a die that was the same color adjacent to another die of the same color, and you're adjacent to a symbol of some kind, you can now score that family. So you'll score the symbol in the family. So you'll score the symbol of the die that you just placed down. And I'm wondering if it also has to match I think it also has to match the tile that's on the stage. So I don't think you can score it unless the die you placed matches the symbol, but it has to be of a certain color, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, so it says if the die you just placed is now in a family of dice, 2 or more connected dice of the same color, regardless of whose seats they are on, you score points. Score 1 point for each instrument face in this family matching the die you just placed, including that die. Okay, so it does not have to do with the stage that it's near or anything like that. So that does not matter, but you're going to want to place dice near their matching stage tiles, discs, because that's going to matter later on in the game. So you do that, and then it says you score the stage. If it is surrounded, count all adjacent dice and families. So surrounded means that any regular space that is adjacent to that stage is filled with a tile and a die. So if it's filled with tiles but no dice, then it's not completely surrounded, so you would not score the stage. So when you're scoring the stage, it says if all normal hexes surrounding a stage are now claimed and booked, meaning they contain seats and dice, the band on that stage performs. So now you're going to determine which player has the most matching symbols on dice listening to the band. A die is listening to a band if it is adjacent to the stage or if it is part of a family adjacent to the stage. And remember, a family is 2 or more connected dice of the same color, regardless of whose seats they are on, meaning regardless of the player that they belong to. So for each feature, distribute points to the winner based on the corresponding rating marker's position on the rating track. So as we discussed, that's where the rating track matters. So, and they're going to, the rating for each symbol is going to decrease as the game progresses. So you want to try to score these symbols, actually this way. You want to, it goes down this way. So you want to try to score these early on because the value of them is going to decrease as the game progresses. So you're going to start, depending on player count, somewhere around here with like 10 points or 11 points per symbol, but then it's going to decrease all the way down here. So you'll look at where, the marker is on its rating track, and then you'll get the points. And you might need to divide evenly if you're tied and so on, blah, blah, blah. And then you lower the marker. Now, if you won a scoring stage, then you get to actually keep that tile. So you remove it from the stage and you get to keep it. And that's going to be important at game end as well. Sorry, I know this is not the best explanation. So let's just skip on to game end. So the game will end after all the players have placed all of their seat tiles and they're all booked, meaning they're all filled with dice. Then you go to game end scoring. And of course, you're going to do any regular scoring that would have happened as it came up. But then at the end of the game, you do family majority scoring. So you're going to look at the biggest family of each color of dice that there are on the board, and you're going to do majority scoring. So each family with a family banner will score points. For each of these families, determine the player who seated the most fans for each feature: percussion, brass, and keys. The player with this majority of each feature will score 1 point per matching token they have in front of them. So let's suppose you are in a family at the end of the game and you have some keyboards, and you have the most keyboards in that family, and you have keyboard tokens in front of you. Since you have the most keyboards, you will get 1 point for each keyboard token that you have in front of you and add that to your total point value. So that is where these tokens come in handy if you manage to score any stages as the game was progressing and you won these tokens. So yeah, it's like I said, it's a very abstract game, and it's not, in my opinion, intuitive because the theme and the gameplay don't really go together or make much sense, in my opinion. I mean, so that's just my opinion. Like the whole idea of there being fans and families, matching colors and so on, and scoring the stages, like it just makes no sense to me thematically. So very much an abstract game that does not make sense thematically to me, which I think makes it harder to grok. Like for me, it was harder to grok this game because of that. Like I understand games much better if they actually tie into the theme and make sense to me. But here, like, just did not make sense thematically to me, so it was harder for me to understand. And, it took quite a bit of time before I really understood what I was doing, but I still lost by quite a bit. In the end, I think I had, what did I have? Let me see. I'll just read you the ending scores. Let's see. So I finished the game with 70 points. The next player had 93 and the winner had 119. So yeah, so like I said, took a little bit of time for me to get. And also, one of my friends was saying how I was not really cooperating. And this is a game, not maybe cooperating isn't the word, but you really don't want to isolate yourself in this game. Like, isolation is probably not the strategy you want to take. And I just kept on kind of placing all of my seats next to each other, kind of ignoring other family colors and ignoring other parts of the board, which is not what you want to do in this game. Like, that is not going to lead you to victory, as you can tell. So yeah, so definitely want to play it again because I really sucked at it, and I would like to see if I grok it a little bit better next time. But also, I think we did miss that one rule. I think we missed the rule where you can optionally re-roll a die that you have. And I wish that I had done that because I think that I would have performed better because there were certain symbols that I really, really wanted and I just wasn't getting. So yeah, and I think I forgot to mention, when you place a die, you can always then select a new die. You could select a die from what's available on the board, or you can randomly select one from the bag and just roll it immediately, and that's the die that you have then. So yeah, so that was Bebop, and I backed this because of Weberson Santiago, not so much because of the designer, because he's kind of a new designer. He designed Moon Rollers for Ivy Studios, and then he designed another game which was published in this same Kickstarter grouping, which was Shuffle and Swing, which I also own, so hopefully I'll get that played soon. So yeah, so he's a relatively new designer, but with a bunch of, you know, games that are lined up to come out, I believe. So yeah, but very abstract. So if you enjoy abstract games, then definitely check this one out because it's an interesting abstract game with cool artwork, but again, not very thematic in my opinion. So that was Bebop, and hopefully I'll play it again someday and do better at it. So yeah, so let's move on. Another game I played recently is Manhattan Project Energy Empire. Oh wow, what do you know? It's actually coming out with a new edition because I just like literally put it into Board Game Geek, and it's coming out with a new edition in 2025. But the old edition that I played with came out in 2017. No, is that the one? No, that's Mexico. Where is the one that I played? I do not know. 2016. Okay, there we go. The copy of this that I played came out in 2016. Another game I played recently is Manhattan Project Energy Empire. Now, this is a 2016 game that is for 1 to 5 players, designed by Tom Jolly and Luke Laurie, and the art is done by Josh Capel, and it's published by Minion Games? I don't know. But it's actually coming out with a new edition. So if you actually put it into Board Game Geek, there's a new edition that's coming out in 2025 that's going to be published by Grail Games. And that looks pretty cool. I mean, only the cover is available right now, but it looks pretty cool. So anyway, so I played a 3-player game of this, and it was my first time playing it. This is like a worker placement game in which you're building power plants, and you are, you know, yeah, you're just collecting different kinds of cards and building, like you get a kind of tableau going and stuff. So you have a certain number of workers and energy tokens, and you're going to be combining your workers and energy tokens and placing them in different locations and activating different cards in your tableau. But you also need workers and energy in order to activate certain cards in your tableau that matches the location where you just placed a worker. But if you place a worker onto the board, you always need to outnumber a worker that was previously placed in that same location. But you can use energy in addition to workers to build up your stack to outnumber someone else who had previously gone there. So there's different sections of the board, like in 3 different colors. So you're trying to get like a variety of different resources, and you're just trying to build up your own engine. Like it's an engine building game and a worker placement game. And you also have like this United Nations track, but there's also like your pollution to keep track of. So as you upgrade your factory or whatever, you're going to be gaining pollution and polluting the environment as well, which will cause you to lose points. And there's always, like, after you go through a certain pollution stack of tokens, then you trigger an event and resolve that event. And, that might cause you to not get as many points if you have, your skies or your seas or whatever polluted. So that was just a very basic overview of what this game is. So I enjoyed my play of it. I thought it was really fun. Unfortunately, we did not get to finish the game, but we had 2 stacks of pollution tokens left. So we ran out of time, but there was only 2 stacks of pollution tokens left. So we had a really good taste of the game and how it plays. But I would be really interested in seeing what the new edition will be like. Yeah. So the cover looks cool for that. So yeah, so looking forward to the new edition. This was not my game, so I played a friend's copy. So yeah. So that was Manhattan Project. And another game I played recently is a game I had backed on Kickstarter, which is Tomten. So on Christmas Day, I played my copy of Tomten, which is like a little game, Christmas game for 2 to 4 players, designed by Chris Scafidi, and the art is done by Jenny Nystrom. And the publisher is Fervent Workshop. So I played with my sister and brother-in-law, and they're really not board gamers, so I played the super basic version of this game, and the super basic version is just okay. It's just like rolling dice and just assigning those dice to different things on cards and then trying to just collect the most cards, and you're just moving up your marker and getting points and stuff. So not super like maybe not a game that a hobby gamer would enjoy, but I think if I had played the maybe the little more advanced version where there might have been some set collection going on and stuff like that, I think I would have enjoyed it a bit more. But for my sister and brother-in-law, the very basic version was good because they sometimes just don't understand what's happening, and I didn't want to have to tell them on each turn what they need to do. So yeah, so that was Tomten. Just the artwork is really pretty, so I really like the artwork, and it was just a nice game to play on Christmas with the very cool like Christmassy artwork. So yeah, so those were some other games I played recently. So let's move on. So I'm not backing anything on Kickstarter, which is really great, so saving money that way, but I did end up purchasing a couple of games, and I think I purchased these after Christmas. I think Barnes & Noble was having like an after Christmas sale or something like that. So this game had really caught my eyes, and somehow I had, I guess, come across this game before. I think maybe it was at Spiel Essen or something, and maybe on their preview list. So I had already had it marked as a wish list game on Board Game Geek, which I didn't realize, but I saw this at Barnes & Noble, so I was able to purchase this at 30% off, which is called Bosa, and it has pretty good reviews on Board Game Geek, and it just seems like some kind of like a card placement kind of game, but each player will have their own like track of some kind. It comes with these like paper envelopes for holding different components, which is really great. And then there is one main board that looks like this, and then it's got like something like you put a little token holder together if you want for the money, and then there's just like a bunch of different kinds of cards with like different colors and stuff on them, so you'll be building up like these pretty houses and stuff. So this is a game that I purchased when it was on sale. And another game that I purchased that was on sale is a game that I've wanted for a long time, and that is Witchcraft from Salt and Pepper Games and 25th Century Games. Now this is a solo only game, and I've had my eyes on this for so long, so I'm really excited to play this. So I purchased this from Barnes & Noble's during its sale as well, when it was 30% off. So yeah, really excited to play this. I've been meaning to play this for quite some time. I just haven't gotten around to it. I've just been so busy with work and working on my own game and just lots of other stuff. So I just really have not had time, unfortunately, but I really want to play this soon. Just a bunch of different cards. Yeah. I just like 3 plain tokens and then, oopsies. Oh dear, this card is bent. How'd that happen? Did I just do that? I don't know. Well, hopefully it won't be too noticeable, but this card is bent. It's a curse card. There's a couple curse cards. Oh, a couple of them are bent. That's weird. I wonder how that happened. But okay, so that's not good. I hope that that won't affect gameplay. I feel like somehow it got affected by the way it was situated in the box, because it's really weird how they're all just kind of bent in the center like that. So I'm wondering what happened there. Huh, that's very bizarre. How did that happen? I wonder if there's something in the box. Maybe it was the way that it was originally packaged. I really don't know. But maybe I'll sleeve them and maybe that will help so that it's not super noticeable or something. But I mean, it's a solo only game, so as long as I'm not like, you know, cheating, then I suppose it's okay. Like if I'm not paying attention to trying to see the crease in the card, then it should be okay. So yeah, so anyway, I'm excited to play both of those games, and I hope I get to play both of them soon. So those are my new arrivals. So let's move on. So let's move on to Fiction Book Club. And if you're following along, we are reading The Bird King, a novel by G. Willow Wilson. And we were supposed to read chapters 4 and 5 for today, which I thought were super interesting and I really enjoyed them. And if you remember in the last video, I talked at length about the dog that we saw in the previous chapters. And I talked about how dogs are supposed to be treated in Islam and all of that stuff. And then I commented how I wonder if we'll see the dog again, and we do. But before we get to the dog, I want to talk about chapter 4. So you learned that Luz, who has appeared at the royal court in Granada, is an inquisitor. And at one point, she and Fatima are having a conversation about whether Fatima will be forcefully converted to Christianity, to Catholicism. And there's a passage in here which I thought was really interesting, which I'm going to read. So it says, "Nor if it came to that could she fathom hell, which seemed a somewhat contradictory place. You could be sent there for behaving in the right way but believing in the wrong God, or for believing in the right God but behaving in the wrong way. And that in turn threw heaven into disarray, since those who both believed and behaved rightly were invited to indulge in the very pleasures for which those who behaved wrongly had been sent to hell. If Luz was right," Luz is the inquisitor, "she would be punished for failing to acknowledge that God had a son. If the imam who grumbled from the minbar in the royal mosque was right, she would be punished for even considering such a proposition. Belief never seemed to enter into anything. It was simply a matter of selecting the correct system of enticements." Like, that is something I have thought about so much. Like, as someone who considers herself a believing Muslim, a practicing Muslim, it's something I think about often. Like, as a Muslim, I always just try to be a good person and just treat others the way I want to be treated, be kind to animals, try to take care of this planet, and those things are really important to me. And if I see someone who I believe is living in such a way, for example, Lek Chaler, the founder and owner of Elephant Nature Park, which is an amazing sanctuary in Thailand, and I believe she's Buddhist, like, would it be fair for her to go to hell because she's Buddhist and doesn't believe that Muhammad was the last prophet of Islam? Or would it be fair for her to go to hell, as Catholics might believe, because she doesn't believe Jesus is the Son of God? Like, how unfair would that be? Like, here we are as humans, and a lot of humans are just trying to do their best in being the best humans that they can possibly be. How fair would it be for a God to send those humans who are really trying to be good humans to hell because they don't believe in the very specific belief set that God may have wanted them to believe in? So for me, that's something that I've always kind of thought about and struggled with. Like, but in Islam, it is believed that God is most merciful. So I don't necessarily believe that every non-Muslim is just going to go straight to hell because they're not Muslim. I don't know how other religions view that, but personally, I think that that is the Islamic view. And the Islamic view, it's repeated time and time again in our holy book that God is most merciful. So I personally, not that I'm an Islamic scholar who's interpreted the Quran, but my way of interpreting that would be that, even when it comes to belief sets, that God would be merciful and look at what kind of a human someone was. At least I hope so, because I myself am a sinner. I'm not like the perfect Muslim, right? So I would hope that he would be merciful and that, good people would all be sent to heaven. So then, looking at the next chapter, so now Hassan has been found out to be this magical map maker, and the Sultan has turned him over and is saying now that, okay, you can have Hassan. So Fatima learns this, and she and Hassan escape after Hassan magically makes a tunnel appear. And then they're lost in this really, really dark place where they can't see anything. And who appears but the dog man? So I think it's really funny how she refers to him as the dog man. But yeah, so this dog man who Fatima, who I mentioned in the last chapter, she was even sleeping next to this dog, and I wondered if we'd ever see this dog again. And now this talking dog has appeared, and I think she even at one point tries guessing what he is and says that maybe he's a jinn. I can't remember if he confirms that or denies that, but I'm guessing he's a jinn, but I don't think it was ever confirmed in the chapter. I cannot remember now. But even more interesting is that at the end of the chapter, Aisha appears. Like, I am really intrigued now. Like, I am super, super interested in reading more and finding out what happens. Like, just very, very interested. So yeah, so let me know what you thought of the last 2 chapters, and what do you think the dog is? Do you think it's a djinn? What do you think is going on? And what do you think Aisha is doing there? And what does she know about all of this? And like, is she like, I don't know, has she been just doing stuff on her own in the background? Like, she and the dog man, are they conspiring? Like, I'm really curious to find out what happens. Let me know your theories in the comments below. And for next week, let's read the next 2 chapters. So chapters 6 and 7. So yeah, so read chapter 6 and 7, and we will discuss those next week. So let's move on. So as you all know, we had finished the 10 Myths About Israel by Elan Papp, and I had asked in the last 2 videos, what kinds of books you guys would be interested in reading for our next book for the nonfiction book club. And a couple of you said that you were very interested in learning about Palestine pre-colonization, and I myself am very interested in that. So someone even suggested a book in the comments below, which my sister had suggested to me and I had heard about, and I am super excited to announce our next book, which is Palestine, A 4,000-Year History by Noor Masalha. So yeah, really excited to read this. It's got really good reviews. So on the back cover, it says, from the late Bronze Age through to the present day, this is the definitive history of Palestine and its people. So a couple of the quotes on the back, a masterpiece of history writing. With this book, Masalha puts Palestinian history back on track. Essential reading, a tour de force, exceptionally valuable, meticulous and multifaceted, a work of broad and impressive scholarship, a master narrative on Palestine. So I am so excited to read this book with you guys. So please get this book, and for next week, read the introduction, which is quite long. So the introduction, and I know some people don't like to read introductions. They think it's not necessary. This introduction is 54 pages long, but I think it'll set the scene for the rest of the book. So I think it's important that we read the introduction. I feel like it would have important information in it since it is so long. So let's read the introduction for next week. So I hope that you will join me in the next nonfiction book club in reading this book so that we can learn about Palestine before the colonization of Palestine began by Zionists. So definitely pick up this book and let's read it together. I'm so excited. So yeah, so that is the next book. So let's move on. So this week's question of the week is inspired by Bebop. Now, if you watched my terrible explanation of this game earlier in this video, you would know that I feel like that this is a super abstract game where the theme and the mechanics have like nothing to do with each other. Like for me, I could not really understand how, you know, the theme even tied into like placing these seats around the stages, like creating families of fans and all of this weird stuff. Like for me, it made no sense. Like thematically, it just made no sense to me. I did not think it was intuitive. It definitely didn't help with grokking the gameplay. So, you know, just a very abstract game with kind of a theme just kind of tagged on. And I'm wondering if this could have been some kind of other theme that maybe would have helped a little bit. Who really knows? I think with a game like this, you just kind of have to pick something that comes as close as possible to the game that you're creating, where the theme actually really has nothing to do with the gameplay. At least that's how I felt about this. Let me know if you feel differently about this game. But I want to know what other abstract games exist where the theme has absolutely nothing to do with the gameplay, but which of those is your favorite? So please tell me what your favorite abstract game is where theme has nothing to do with gameplay, but you still can grok the gameplay and you still really enjoyed it. So please leave your answers in the comments below. And on the flip side, tell me which abstract game you absolutely did not like because for the same reasons, that theme had absolutely nothing to do with the gameplay, and maybe it made it even more difficult for you to learn the game. So just, you know, leave your thoughts about all of that in the comments below, and until next time, bye!